In this video, we're going to talk about how to set up a Zoom webinar. Now, for starters, you first have to establish a Zoom Pro account. Currently, this is $14.99 per month per host, and that allows you to then add a webinar add-on for $40 per month for a maximum of 100 live attendees. So you can register more, but only 100 attendees can attend at the same time. And typically only 20 to 50% of the registrants are actually showing up. So if you have a webinar for 100 attendees, you're probably safe to register for up to 250 attendees and still come out okay. So, I've already gone ahead and set up my Zoom Pro, and then you would essentially just go through the process of buying Zoom Webinar, and after you purchase it, you will see that the webinar shows up in your account. So when you go here in Zoom under admin user management, you can then look at the users, and then you can look at your user ID, and then you can enable essentially this checkbox here that says webinar with a quantity and hit save. And so this is an important step, but because only once you have enabled the webinar for that user will you actually have the ability to schedule webinars in your Zoom account. So to schedule your Zoom webinar, you would go under personal webinars, and then you would click the blue schedule a webinar button. And then we need to enter the topic of your webinar. So in this case, we're going to call this COVID-19 town hall meeting. And you should then have some descriptive copy, including some bullets of why they should attend, what you're going to cover. And Zoom does not allow you to enter bullets, so the way we're doing bullets is with these square brackets and a plus sign and a space, and that creates bullets here. Next, you're going to pick the date. So let's say Thursday, April 30th, and let's say you want to do this at 1 p.m. The duration is of no consequence, so you can go longer than 1 hour here. So I would usually leave it at 1 hour. Make sure you have the time zone selected, and then you want to make registration required. That is what generates a registration page. We don't require a webinar password. You want to make sure that hosts and panelists join with the ability to turn the video on. For audio, you will select the radio button for both. And then under webinar options, you will enable the checkbox for Q&A at the minimum. I would also say record the webinar automatically, and you can do this either on the local computer or in the cloud. During the pandemic, when there was a lot of demand on Zoom servers, it was recommended to do the recording on the local computer, so that seems like a safe bet. And you can make the webinar on demand, so after the live webinar happens, people can still opt in and then see the replay right inside Zoom. So you want to check that as well. And in that case, obviously you have to record to the cloud because Zoom needs to have your webinar available. All that's left to do is click here schedule, and so now the webinar is on the books. There's a couple more things that you now need to do. For one, here is the registration URL that you will use in your social media copy. So you can see if we're taking that link and pasting it into your browser, this generates the webinar registration. You can see here's the title, the copy that we entered for the description, and then Zoom is collecting first name, last name, email address, and confirm email address. Now we want to make sure that we're also updating the rest of the settings. So again, go back to webinar, and now you can see under upcoming webinars that we have our town hall meeting. And we're going to click here on email settings, so you can see here what's the confirmation email that's sent to registrants. So you can enter a little bit more copy here. It will essentially have the description that you pasted in here. So there's not a lot that you can enter into this email from Zoom, only here and there. You can certainly update the subject if you wanted to, and then you click save. The other thing you want to set up here is the reminder email. So you want to send people a reminder emails at least 1 hour and 1 day before the webinar, and typically we leave this unchanged. Again, you can enter here some custom copy and then you click save. So what we've done now is that people will get a confirmation email and they will get a reminder email 1 hour and 1 day before the webinar. You can also set up here follow-up emails to attendees. And so in this case, again, you have very minimal ways to enter your own copy here, but it's available if you so choose to, and you can also send a follow-up email to absentees. One of the things that we're recommending is that you're connecting your Zoom webinar registration via a tool like Zapier to your autoresponder, let's say to Active Campaigns. So every time somebody registers for your Zoom webinar, which we can do right now, let's say doing it here. You can see here when they register, now their webinar registration is automatically approved. They can click here to add it to their calendar. So when you add it to their calendar, they have to sign in with their, obviously, Google Calendar, and then just click save. Here's their personal access link. And then just to show you where the information is stored, when you go back to your webinars here and you click on your actual webinar, you can now scroll to the bottom and you can see here manage attendees. So now you can click here on view and you can see the list of all the people that are registering. Now you could collect the emails from here and then manually transfer them into your email autoresponder, but you can't export this as a CSV file and then just mass export it and import it back into your email autoresponder. And so this is why using a tool like Zapier is very powerful, so it automatically transfers any registrations into your email autoresponder. And we're going to cover that in a separate video. So this is really the process how you can set up your webinar in Zoom, collect email addresses, and obviously at the time of when the webinar happens, you can just click this button to start this webinar. And we're going to cover the actual process of running the Zoom webinar in a separate video.